Imagine being told that celebrating Christmas in your own home is too offensive. Not because it is unsafe, not because it's illegal, but because it makes some people uncomfortable. Now imagine refusing to back down and spending the next 8 years fighting a powerful homeowners association, a federal judge, and the entire legal system, only to walk away with a bigger victory than anyone expected. This is the unbelievable true story of Jeremy Morris, the man the internet now calls the Christmas lawyer. What started as a joyful holiday display meant to raise money for children battling cancer turned into one of the most controversial HOA lawsuits in America. With hundreds of thousands of Christmas lights, live nativity scenes, choirs, and even a camel, Jeremy didn't just decorate his house. He made a statement. His neighbors weren't happy. The HOA tried to shut him down. Threats followed. Court battles dragged on for years. At one point, he lost everything, was banned from celebrating Christmas entirely, and was ordered to pay over $100,000 to the very people who tried to silence him. But Jeremy refused to quit. Appeals were filed, rulings were challenged, and pressure climbed all the way to the Supreme Court. And when the dust finally settled, the HOA that tried to cancel Christmas ended up paying him and funding his biggest Christmas celebration ever. This isn't just a story about lights or decorations. It's about belief versus control, faith versus rules, and how far one man was willing to go to defend what he believed was his right to celebrate Christmas, no matter the cost. Jeremy Morris wasn't trying to become famous. He wasn't chasing controversy, clicks, or court battles. He was a lawyer, a husband, a father, and someone who deeply believed in the meaning of Christmas. In 2014, Jeremy built an elaborate Christmas light display at his home, not for attention, but to raise money for children fighting cancer. The lights were bright, joyful, and impossible to ignore. Families drove for miles just to see them. Thousands of people visited. Donations poured in. For Jeremy, this wasn't decoration. It was ministry, charity, and faith combined. The attention felt positive at first. News outlets praised the effort. Visitors cried, laughed, and prayed together. It felt like Christmas was doing exactly what it was meant to do, bringing people together. But what Jeremy didn't realize was that this moment of joy would plant the seed for a legal nightmare that would follow him for nearly a decade. Because while the crowd saw hope, someone else was watching closely, and they weren't smiling. Quietly, behind the scenes, the rules were being reviewed, complaints were being collected, and lines were being drawn. Christmas for Jeremy Morris was about to become a battleground. In 2015, Jeremy and his family moved into what they believed was their dream home in West Hayden Estates, Idaho. It was peaceful, beautiful, and felt like the perfect place to build memories. Wanting to be respectful, Jeremy informed the HOA president that he planned to continue his Christmas tradition, only bigger and better. Instead of excitement, he received concern. The HOA warned him that his display might offend some neighbors, especially atheists in the community. That was the first red flag. Jeremy wasn't being told his display was unsafe or illegal, only that it might make some people uncomfortable. For him, that wasn't a valid reason to cancel Christmas. Months before December, Jeremy began decorating anyway. By the time winter arrived, his home was glowing with nearly 700,000 lights. This wasn't subtle. This was bold. The HOA repeated their demands. Jeremy refused. To him, backing down meant surrendering his religious expression. What should have been a joyful season quickly turned tense. Emails turned into legal warnings. Neighbors grew angry. And the closer Christmas came, the clearer it became that this was no longer about lights, it was about control. Despite the pressure, Jeremy moved forward. The Christmas event ran for 5 nights and became far more than a light display. There was a live nativity scene, costumed characters, a children's choir singing carols, even a real camel. Families lined the streets. Children stared in awe. Donations continued flowing to charity. But behind the scenes, the Morris family began receiving threats. Angry messages, hostile looks. Christmas cheer turned into fear. The HOA viewed the event as a violation of neighborhood rules. Jeremy viewed the HOA's actions as religious discrimination. 2 completely different interpretations, and neither side was willing to back down. For Jeremy, this wasn't stubbornness, it was principle. He believed his faith was protected by law. He believed Christmas was worth defending. By the time the lights came down, the damage was already done. Relationships with neighbors were broken. Trust was gone. And the Morris family knew one thing for sure. This fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. In 2017, after months of tension and legal threats, Jeremy Morris made a decision that would define the next 8 years of his life. He sued the HOA. Jeremy's lawsuit accused the HOA of violating the Fair Housing Act and engaging in religious discrimination. The case quickly gained national attention. Media outlets framed it as a classic David versus Goliath story, one man standing up to an overreaching HOA. When the case finally went to trial, the jury delivered a shocking result. They unanimously sided with Jeremy Morris. The HOA was ordered to pay him $75,000. For a moment, it felt like justice had won. Supporters celebrated, critics went silent. Jeremy believed the nightmare was over, but then came the twist no one saw coming. A federal judge overturned the jury's verdict. According to the judge, Jeremy had failed to provide sufficient proof of religious discrimination. Instead, the court ruled that he had violated neighborhood rules. The punishment was devastating. Jeremy was permanently banned from hosting another Christmas display. The ruling crushed Jeremy financially and emotionally. He had spent years fighting what he believed was injustice, and now the system had turned against him. Friends told him to let it go. Critics said he pushed too far. Even supporters wondered if the fight was worth it anymore. But Jeremy refused to accept the ruling as the final word. In 2020, he appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Then he waited and waited. 4 long years passed with no resolution. Meanwhile, the Morris family moved out of Idaho, though they kept ownership of the home. The story became the subject of a 2021 documentary titled "'Twas the Fight Before Christmas," keeping the controversy alive. When the appeals court finally ruled, it reaffirmed the federal judge's decision. Another loss, another setback. But Jeremy wasn't done. He took the case all the way to the Supreme Court. The highest court didn't rule directly. Instead, it pushed the case back down, reopening pressure on the HOA. Suddenly, after years of confidence, the HOA blinked. They didn't want to keep fighting, and that's when everything changed. Behind closed doors, negotiations began. After nearly 8 years of legal warfare, both sides were exhausted. And then it happened. The HOA agreed to settle. On December 24th, Jeremy Morris went public with the news. The ban was lifted. The case was over, and the settlement amount? Significantly larger than the original $75,000 jury award. Jeremy described the moment as vindication. He wrote that the wrong done by the federal judge had been undone, and his family's right to celebrate Christmas had been restored. Speaking to Fox News, he confirmed that the HOA paid him far more than anyone expected. For the man who had been silenced, fined, and banned, this felt like a comeback. But the real shock came next. Jeremy revealed exactly how he planned to use the money. Not quietly, not privately, but loudly and symbolically. The same HOA that tried to shut down Christmas was now funding its return. And not just any return, the biggest one yet. Jeremy didn't hide his feelings. He said he was buying a lot of Christmas lights and enjoying every moment of screwing in each bulb, because each one reminded him of the HOA's failed attempt to shut him down. He made it clear he wouldn't spread Christmas cheer to people who hated him, but he would absolutely celebrate using their money. The internet exploded. Supporters called it poetic justice. Critics called it petty revenge. Some praised his persistence. Others accused him of escalating conflict unnecessarily. But no one could deny one thing: Jeremy Morris got the last word. His story reignited debates across America about HOA power, religious freedom, and personal expression. Similar cases surfaced, including a family in Texas facing fines over their Christmas lights. The question became bigger than Jeremy. How much control should HOAs have? Where does community order end and personal freedom begin? And who decides what's too much when it comes to faith? Today, the Christmas Lawyer story remains deeply divisive. To some, Jeremy Morris is a symbol of standing firm against overreach, a man who refused to let bureaucracy silence belief. To others, he represents excess, disruption, and unwillingness to compromise. The truth likely sits somewhere in between. What is undeniable is this: one Christmas display sparked an 8-year legal war that reached the Supreme Court, changed lives, and forced an HOA to settle in silence. Jeremy lost money, time, peace, and neighbors, but he gained something else: the right to celebrate Christmas on his own terms. This story isn't really about lights. It's about boundaries, belief, and how far someone is willing to go when they feel their rights are threatened. Whether you see him as a hero or a troublemaker, the question remains: If someone tried to cancel your traditions, your faith, or your voice, would you fight back? So now the story ends where it began, with Christmas lights, belief, and a question that still divides people. Jeremy Morris didn't just fight an HOA. He challenged the idea that comfort should outweigh conviction. For 8 long years he lost money, peace, and neighbors, but he never lost his resolve. In the end, the very organization that tried to silence him paid to restore what it took away. Some see justice, others see excess. But one thing is undeniable: this case exposed how powerful HOAs can be, and how fragile personal freedoms may feel when rules collide with belief. Across America, similar battles continue, proving this wasn't just one man's fight, but part of a much bigger conversation. Whether you believe Jeremy was right or wrong, his story forces us to ask a hard question. When traditions, faith, or expression are challenged, where do you draw the line? Would you stay quiet? Or would you turn the lights back on and fight? If this story made you think, share your opinion in the comments, because in stories like this, the debate is just as important as the ending.